Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Diana. If you're new, if you're not new, welcome back. Today I want to do a recap of all of the books that I have read in the last 30 days. Technically 30 days is going to be tomorrow, but I have some time to film this video now, so I'm going to do that today. One of the reasons of why I started this challenge was to, one, get back into the habit of reading every single day. Two, I genuinely wanted to see how many books I could get through. And three, doing this challenge allowed me to get outside of my comfort zone and try new books out that I otherwise would not really get into, because every single day I had to think, okay, what book am I going to read next, because I didn't want to miss a single day of reading. So I feel like I accomplished all of three of those things. I read so many great books this, I guess, technically month. So in total, I read 9 books and I started 2 new ones yesterday, I believe. And I'm halfway through one of them. So I think that potentially I'll be finishing one of them by tomorrow. Additionally, I do want to mention that a couple of these were audiobooks, so that is also partially why I was able to get through a good amount of novels in the last 30 days. For any of you who struggle with reading and you really want to get into it, I highly recommend setting a challenge for yourself and giving yourself a goal of like, okay, I'm going to read for 30 minutes every single day for 4 weeks or for 5 weeks or for a month or whatever it might be, or for 30 days like this challenge. Like, just set that as your goal and make it your non-negotiable, and I promise you will get back into the swing of reading and you will fall in love with it all over again. If you're like me and you kind of like fell off the bandwagon of reading and you want to get back into it, this challenge will be perfection for you. So I'm going to go off of my Goodreads. Make sure to follow me on there. I usually always post the books that I'm reading on there. Starting off with the first book that I read during this challenge, and it was called The Drowning Woman by Robin Harding. Okay, this book was phenomenal and it was the perfect book to start this challenge off with. I rated this book 4 stars. I'm going to read to you what it's about really quick, or just give you a quick gist of it. Lee Gulliver never thought she'd find herself living in the streets. No one ever does. But when her restaurant fails and she falls deeper into debt, she leaves her old life behind with nothing but her clothes and her old Toyota Corolla. In Seattle, she parks in secluded spots by the beach to lay low and plan her next move. Until early one morning, she sees a sobbing woman throw herself into the ocean. Lee hauls the woman back to the surface, but instead of appreciation, she is met with fury. The drowning woman, Hazel, tells her that she wanted to die, that she's trapped in a toxic, abusive marriage, and that she's a prisoner in her own home. Lee has thwarted her one chance to escape her life. Out of options, Hazel retreats to her gilded cage, and Lee thinks she's seen the last of her until her unexpected return the next morning. Bonded by desperate but difficult circumstances, the women soon strike up a close and unlikely friendship, and then one day Hazel makes a shocking request. She wants Lee to help her disappear. It'll be easy, Hazel assures her, but Lee soon learns that nothing is as it seems and that Hazel may not be the friend that Lee thought she was. It was so good. I kid you not, I read this book so fast. This book was phenomenal. It had me hooked the entire time. There are a few twists that you're not gonna see coming at all, but definitely a really good thriller. Very good book to start your challenge off with, because it'll keep you hooked the whole time and you will be entertained literally the entire time. So definitely recommend that one. I rated it 4 stars. Okay, the next book is, this was the first book that I read by Riley Sagar, and I am absolutely obsessed. This one is called The Only One Left, and I started reading this, I remember, around my birthday, and I think I finished it right like before my birthday dinner, and I was mind blown. I remember it was, yeah, I finished this book on October 20th. Okay, let me read what it's about. I definitely say this is one of the best thrillers that I've ever read. It's like very gothic, and I don't know, when I was reading it and like envisioning it in my mind, I was like, this would be like, I would love to experience this. I would love to be the main character in this book. It's a little bit Fall of the Usher House, just like a little bit. So I just loved it. And then I'd even like tie it into maybe like Verity. It's kind of those kind of vibes, honestly. So this book is about a young caregiver assigned to work for a woman accused of a Lizzie Borden-like massacre decades earlier. At 17, Lenora Hope hung her sister with a rope. Now reduced to a schoolyard chant, the Hope family murders shocked the Maine coast one bloody night in 1929. While most people assume 17-year-old Lenora was responsible, the police were never able to prove it. Other than her denial after the killings, she has never spoken publicly about that night, nor has she set foot outside of Hope's End, the cliffside mansion where the massacre occurred. She stabbed her father with a knife, took her mother's happy life. It's now 1983 and home health aide Kit McDeer arrives at a decaying Hope's End to care for Lenora after her previous nurse fled in the middle of the night. In her 70s and confined to a wheelchair, Lenora was rendered mute by a series of strokes and can only communicate with Kit by tapping out sentences on an old typewriter. One night, Lenora uses it to make a tantalizing offer. "I want to tell you everything. It wasn't me," Lenora said, "but she's the only one that's not dead." As Kit helps Lenora write about the events leading to the Hope family massacre, it becomes clear there's more to the tale than people know. The word that I would use to describe this novel is riveting. It was so interesting. It kept me hooked the whole time. I couldn't put it down. 5 out of 5 stars for me. And I love novels where something like crazy happens and like years later you find out what truly happened. Like, I love that unraveling aspect to a book. So I think this was the first book that I actually read by Riley Sager, and I'm officially hooked. I started reading a book called The September House. Did not finish it because it was not very enjoyable for me, but I did pay for it, so I feel like I might come back to it. We'll see. Comment down below if you have read The September House by Carissa Orlando. I've heard so many positive things, and Goodreads has such great reviews, but it was just not my cup of tea. The next book that I read was You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Geneva Rose. This was actually an audiobook that I listened to. It was a 3 for me. I actually have my full review on here. It was an interesting read. I was hooked the whole time, but was also debating whether or not it was even worth finishing. The ending saved everything for me. I'd give it a 3.5 stars. I wouldn't read it again, but would recommend to anyone looking for a quickie. Meaning, audiobooks for me are the kind of books that they keep me entertained, but I'm not really like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? Because I usually listen to them while I'm taking a walk, while I'm cleaning, while I'm doing like house stuff or whatever it might be. Sometimes I get like a really good audiobook, but this just like wasn't really one of them. Grace Evans, an overworked New Yorker looking for a total escape from her busy life, books an Airbnb on a ranch in the middle of Wyoming. When she arrives, she's pleasantly surprised to find that the owner is a handsome man by the name of Calvin Wells. But there are things Grace discovers that she's not too pleased about. A lack of cell phone service, a missing woman, and a feeling that something isn't right with the town. Despite her uneasiness and misgivings from Calvin's friends and family, the two grow close and start to fall one another. However, as her departure date nears, things between them start to change for the worse. Grace grows wary of Calvin as his infatuation for her seems to turn into an obsession. 3.5 stars. Yeah, 3.5 stars, because it was just like a little like mediocre for me throughout the whole time, but then the hook hit and I was like, okay, that's kind of, I did not like the twist. I mean, it did not see it coming at all, so that's where the extra half star comes in. Would recommend if you're looking for a quickie, like I mentioned, but it wasn't mind-blowing to me. The next audiobook that I listened to was The Coworker by Frida McFadden. I did not enjoy this at all. Usually I like Frida McFadden books. I'm like 50-50 on them actually. 2 women, an office filled with secrets, one terrible crime that can't be taken back. Dawn shift is that can't be taken back. Dawn shift is strange. At least everyone thinks so. At Vicks, the nutritional supplement company where Dawn works as an accountant. She never says the right thing, she has no friends, and she's always at her desk precisely at 8:45. So when Dawn doesn't show up to the office one morning, her coworker Natalie Farrell, a beautiful, popular top sales rep 5 years running, is surprised. Then she receives an unsettling anonymous phone call that changes everything. It turns out Dawn wasn't just an awkward outsider, she was being targeted by someone close. And now Natalie is irrevocably tied to Dawn as she finds herself caught in a twisted game of cat and mouse that leaves her wondering, who's the real victim? One thing is incredibly clear, somebody hated Dawn Schiff enough to kill her. It's like quote-unquote a fast-paced thriller, but I just did not enjoy the storyline. I thought it was kind of boring like, I don't know, it just was like meh to me, just meh. I gave it 2 stars. And it's crazy because it has a lot of ratings, 82,000 ratings, 3.87 stars from others, but for me, 2 stars. Next up, She Started It by Sian Gilbert. For fans of Lucy Foley and Leanne Moriarty, She Started It is a hot, twisty summer debut thriller about a group of young women whose Caribbean bachelorette party takes a sinister turn. It's Lord of the Flies meets And Then There Were None, but with Instagram and too much Prosecco. Annabelle, Esther, Tanya, and Chloe are best friends, or were as children. Despite drifting apart in adulthood, shared secrets have kept them bonded for better or worse, even as their childhood dreams haven't quite turned out as they'd hoped. Then one day they receive a wholly unexpected but not entirely unwelcome invitation from another old friend. Poppy Greer has invited them all to her extravagant bachelorette party, all expenses paid for, a first-class plane ticket to 3 days of white sand cocktails and relaxation on a private island in the Bahamas. None of them have spoken to Poppy in years, but Poppy's Instagram pics show that the girl they used to consider the weakest link in their group has definitely made good and made money. So basically, they go to the island and stuff starts to happen, and slowly but surely, each of them start to die slowly. One after the other. It was I don't know how to explain it. It was a little cringy at parts, but it was enough to keep me hooked the whole time. And at some points it was just a little bit too predictable, I would say. I'd give this book 3 stars. Next up was another audiobook, and it was called The Engagement Party by Finley Turner. It wasn't enjoyable, honestly. I didn't even rate it. It was rated 3.5 on Goodreads, but it was pretty boring. In my opinion, I would not recommend it to anybody. So you know what? I'm not even gonna tell you what it was about. Next was another Riley Sager book. This book was very good. Highly recommend reading it. 15 years ago, summer camper Emma Davis watched sleepily as her 3 cabin mates snuck out of their cabin in the dead of night. The last she and anyone saw of them was Vivian closing the cabin door behind her, hushing Emma with a finger pressed to her lips. Now a rising star in the NYC art scene, Emma turns her past into paintings. They catch the attention of Francesca Harris White, the socialite and wealthy owner of the very same camp, Nightingale. And when Francesca implores Emma to return to the camp as a painting counselor, Emma sees an opportunity to find closure and move on. Yet it is immediately clear that all is not right at Camp Nightingale. Already haunted by surfacing memories, Emma is suddenly plagued by a security camera pointed directly at her cabin, mounting mistrust from Francesca, and most disturbing of all, cryptic clues Vivian apparently left behind about the camp's twisted origins. I feel like this is such a bad description of the novel. Basically, this girl went to a camp, 3 of her friends disappeared, and everybody thinks they obviously died. It's been like, what, 15 years or something like that later. Emma, the main character, she becomes a semi-famous painter, and the owner of that camp invites her back to the camp. And basically what happens is Emma starts to see these like clues that were left behind by Vivian, who was one of the girls that disappeared. This book took me a while to get into. I think it was like 80 pages or so that I had to get through before I was like, all right, I'm actually starting to get a little bit interested. But I did end up rating this book 4 stars, so I'd recommend reading it. Just don't let yourself give up on it before you start to actually like get into it, if that makes sense. I think that Riley Sager books are just really good, and this one was it just took a little bit of warming up, if that makes sense. Okay, the next book was another Riley Sager book, and this one was called Final Girls. I actually enjoyed this book significantly more than the last time I lied. I was hooked immediately with this one. 10 years ago, college student Quincy Carpenter went on a vacation with 5 friends and came back alone, the only survivor of a horror movie scale massacre. In an instant, she became a member of a club no one wants to belong to, a group of similar survivors known in the press as the Final Girls. Lisa, who lost 9 sorority sisters to a college dropout knife, Sam, who went up against the sack man during her shift at the Nightingale Inn. Some of these descriptions are so terrible. Basically, Quincy Carpenter, the main character, went on a vacation with her friends in a cabin. She was the only one who ended up surviving the massacre that occurred in that cabin. X amount of years later, she's thriving in her life. She has this beautiful New York apartment, great boyfriend, and she's a blogger and she bakes basically. However, the problem is that she can't remember exactly what happened to her. It's almost like she blocked that memory out of her mind, like of that night and what happened to her. There's this woman named Lisa who was considered like the first final girl. She was found in a tub with her wrists slit. So all of a sudden, Quincy is kind of like starting to get all of these memories again, and she's starting to like think about what happened to her again. And then on top of that, this other woman shows up at her doorstep. Her name is Sam, and she's also one of the final girls. But this girl apparently like fell off the face of the earth. She completely just went AWOL and nobody knew what happened to her. She was supposedly like keeping low, but now she comes back and she's trying to be like Quincy's friend and trying to figure out what happened to Quincy, or like trying to force Quincy to remember what happened to her. So now Quincy's like trying to figure out why Sam is like pressuring her to remember what happened that night. She's also trying to figure out what happened to Lisa and why she committed suicide. It's such a good book. I didn't expect half of the things that happened in it, honestly, and it goes back and forth between 15 years ago, I believe, versus the present, which is where Quincy is. It like explains to you what happened in that cabin when the massacre occurred. Definitely recommend this book. I'd give it honestly a 4.5. That's how good it was. Next book that I read / listened to was Keep Your Friends Close by Lucinda Berry. This was a fantastic book, and I'm so excited to read it because it's by the same author who wrote The Perfect Child, and I love The Perfect Child. It's such a good book. If you haven't read that one, highly recommend you do so. It's like the perfect psychological thriller. When Kirsten McCann, president of the West Hollywood Moms Club, turns up dead in her own pool, it quickly becomes clear this was not an accident, and the party guests, all members of the exclusive club, are now key suspects in her murder. Accusations fly and 3 mothers find themselves at the center of the investigation. Whitney, Brooke, and Jade all have heavy secrets to bear and possible motives for their friend's murder. But as the police look closer, more secrets, betrayals, and sinister plots are revealed than the woman could ever imagine. With everything at stake, deceit threatens to shatter their illusions of the perfect life. West Hollywood will never be the same. I always loved reading a book that takes place in LA. This book 100% kept me hooked the whole time from the beginning, honestly. I genuinely enjoyed it. I did not see the ending whatsoever. Half of the stuff that happened I didn't anticipate. I just thought it was a really good novel. I gave it 4 stars. It was great. Okay, so those are the books that I read and finished. As I mentioned, I started reading 2 different books yesterday. One of them is an audiobook and the other one is a regular one. The audiobook is actually a Court of, I'm pulling it up on my Hoopla. A Court of Thorns and Roses. Now, I know, I'm so late to the party. I have this physical book and I bought it actually during like lockdowns and everything, so I've had it for a long time. I think I tried to read it 2 or 3 times and I just couldn't get into it. However, I started listening to the audiobook. I'm in, like I'm good, I'm hooked. So I'm definitely enjoying it. I think moving forward after this one, I will read the physical copies, just because I feel like when you read the physical copy you like get more of the information in you as opposed to audio. But I'm enjoying it. I think I'm like halfway through it, which is why I mentioned that I'll probably finish it tomorrow. 49% done with it, and I'm loving it so far. So comment down below if you have read A Court of Roses and Thorns. I keep calling it that, A Court of Thorns and Roses. Comment down below if you've read it and what you thought of it. That is the current audiobook that I'm listening to. In terms of the book that I'm reading, which I'm about to go and shower right now, get into some comfy clothes, get a glass of wine, and I'm going to read the heck out of this book because it's so good. It's giving me, I forgot the name of this TV show, A Haunting of Bly Manor, something like that. Those are the vibes that I'm getting from this book. Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. Riley Sager is one of my new favorite authors. Every book that I've read thus far has been fantastic and good and very just like, almost like, I want to say thoroughly researched. If I met Riley, I'd be like, you know everything that you're talking about. I don't know how to explain it. But anyways, I barely started it. I think I'm only like on chapter 3 or 4. Like I said, I started it yesterday. In the latest thriller from New York Times bestselling Riley Sager, a woman returns to the house made famous by her father's bestselling horror memoir. Is the place really haunted by evil forces, as her father claimed? Or are there more earthbound and dangerous secrets hidden within its walls? What was it like living in that house? Maggie Holt is used to such questions. 25 years ago, she and her parents, Ewan and Jess, moved into Bainbury Hall, a rambling Victorian estate in the Vermont woods. They spent 3 weeks there before fleeing in the dead of night, an ordeal Ewan later recounted in a non-fiction book called House of Horrors. His tale of ghostly happenings and encounters with malevolent spirits became a worldwide phenomenon, rivaling the Amityville horror in popularity and skepticism. Yeah, this book definitely gives me Amityville horror vibes, actually, and that's all I'm gonna give you because I didn't even read the full-on like bio of the book because I never really do that. I just kind of read the first couple of sentences or whatever and then gauge whether or not I'm gonna be interested in it, and then I just dive in, and I just like to trust my gut. But anyways, I'm loving this book so far. Definitely will not finish it before tomorrow, but so far so good. Anyways, I'm gonna be ending this video here. I will list all of the books that I read and the ratings in the description box below, so if you're interested in checking any of those out, they will also be linked in my Amazon storefront, so be sure to check them out. If you have any suggestions for any other books that are similar to any of these, please feel free to drop them down below. I'm always on the hunt for a good new thriller or mystery, or even from time to time a little romance, and clearly now I'm into fantasy now that I'm reading The Court of Roses and Thorns, and I know I just said that incorrectly yet again. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.